Welcome back to Gear and Beer. Today, my esteemed guest, Mr. Brett Papa. Brett, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, hell yeah. We've been trying for a minute. You live really far from here. That's not your fault.
3 kids and a wife that's a chiropractor that's in demand.
That sounds like not a fault, but an asset.
No, it's a total asset. She's amazing. Amazing, like super mom, and lucky in this life.
Bro. I don't have
and a
any
yoga
children.
Instructor. You were talking about yoga.
Oh,
It's
really?
real deal. Like lived in India, did the whole bit. Like full Ashtangi, like lived in India for 2 years, studied with the man.
That's awesome.
Tommy Joy, like the whole 9 yards. It's awesome. Yeah, that's how we met. It was at a yoga retreat.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, probably 3 years ago, I couldn't even come close to bending over and touching the ground.
Yeah.
I had a streak for a minute once I was really getting into it, and I had lost some weight, where I had like 230 days in a row of practice every day, and I felt great. And then, COVID ended and started getting busy, and it's hard to do yoga on a plane or in a van,
right?
Or on a bus even.
We used to do. I would do when we first met back then. I think I was like 25 when I started, and we were doing yoga for 2 classes in a row. And it's like I think back to that, I'm like, man, when I had
like 45s or 290s.
No, 290s.
Ooh,
and I was like, man, the days when I had 3 hours just to burn to do 3 hours of yoga. Now I'm like, if I have 5 extra minutes in my life, it's amazing. But yeah, it's the man. Everybody out there, if you can, it's life changing. Like
it really. I've been trying to get my old ass dad into doing
Oh,
it. Dad, I know you're probably going to watch this. You need to do yoga
Yes,
because
you
you'll
do.
feel
Dad,
better.
do it.
First of all, he's 64 years old and a scratch golfer.
Good for him.
A lifelong athlete, but he's jacked his back up doing it. And I'm just trying to tell him, I was like, it's going to hurt for a little bit, but then it's going to be better. It's going to hurt because your bones haven't moved in ways that they need to move in a very long time. They've done plenty of torso rotation.
Right.
That's about it.
You know, it's interesting because, like, and I know this is totally off topic, but
there is no off topic.
It's interesting because even friends of mine who are like really phenomenal athletes, it's muscles that you don't normally use.
Absolutely, which is what is so healing about it.
Yeah.
It's not just, doing curls and getting biceps and then your triceps disappear and all of a sudden your elbows hurt and whatever. I like the balanced approach to things.
Yeah.
It does make a difference.
All that stuff, man. I got back into martial arts recently too, and
oh, really?
I've been
which one?
I do jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
I did that back in the day.
Yeah, super fun, right? So when I was a kid, the Gracies, when they moved to California, were my neighbors.
Oh, really?
And so it was back in the day. It was only private. I was like, I think I was 15 then. So like, whatever. You're like indestructible. Well, I mean, they would pummel you and you wouldn't feel it. But now, like, I'm going in and I'm getting on, getting close to 50, and it's just like, I go in there and it's just like, holy crap. Like all those like arm muscles and all that stuff that you just haven't used in forever.
That scares me, man.
Yeah.
I stopped doing it because I think I was probably 20 at the time, but I was, actively playing gigs and stuff, and I stopped doing it because just like grappling on the floor at the instructor's place separated my freaking shoulder. I was down for the count.
I know, man.
Bro, I can't do that.
we were rolling around and the teachers, one of my buddies or whatever, and he we were rolling around and he was like, he had my arm, and all of a sudden we heard this, and he's like, oh, he's like, was that your elbow? And I was like, yeah. I think it's okay. Like it's like coming back. I was like, okay, good. My elbow still works or whatever, but it's good because it's like,
that's scary, man.
Well, it's funny is I think that being guitar players and musicians, we spend so much of our life sitting, and after you do that for so long, you don't realize like I got to stand up, like I got to like bend in other ways.
Those standing desks,
yeah.
If I could get a recording desk that I could raise,
they're
up,
amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they're awesome. Amazing.
I just do yoga. I just do like short yoga videos and get stretched back out.
Yeah.
on long days of shedding for tunes, or if I'm editing, or whatever, recording, any of that stuff, it's like I'm good for about 2 hours, and then everything slowly starts to hurt.
It's just like,
I can tell when it's about to start because my circulation will slow and like fingers or toes will get cold or something. I'll be like, all right, we better go ahead and get up now and stave off the pain.
No, I when I worked at Divided by 13 forever ago, it was like all day in a chair and never getting up. So finally I was like, I got to set like an hour alarm on my phone, and every hour, like get up and like do some push-ups and
touch your toes.
Yeah, exactly. Bend the other way, because you just start getting that like amp builder posture where you're just like,
oh man. Yeah, I get it like right on the inside of my right shoulder blade, between the right shoulder blade and my spine, from
brutal,
working over on my pedal boards or restringing or something. My computer is actually generally pretty good because with this gigantic TV, I can like lean back in my.
Is that for like your like? Does Logic come up on that?
Oh yeah, and I iMovie everything. It's just an extension. I can drag stuff from my laptop with an HDMI cable connection. That's it, man.
Looks for real.
It's my old living room television. I have a shittier TV in my living room now so that I can bring that up here.
Why not, man?
The one in my living room is like 2 or maybe 5 inches bigger.
Yeah.
Virtually unnoticeable.
Right.
And the TV sucks. But, we have been putting off getting furniture and stuff for so long because we know we're moving. I'm not going to buy something and then choose a house and like, oh wait, this doesn't fit by work. 6 inches.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going down that.
Bro,
road.
You need Space Lettuce to be a sponsor.
Man, I
need beer.
He's not wrong. Monday Night Brewing, shout out. We'll certainly tag you.
Mm-hmm.
We've consumed this particular beer on this particular podcast.
Wicked Cook. I don't know if you guys know that out there. Oh, there's your camera. I don't know if you guys know that. Wicked steak tacos. He brought me up like steak, fresh tortillas, salsa. Like, you got skills, dude.
I appreciate that. I just I want to eat both tasty and as healthy as I can.
Yeah.
And by God, all of the experts say, if you want a pizza, you want a taco, you want to be healthy, cook it at home.
Yeah.
You can control what goes into it. Like you said earlier, you hit it nail on the head, man.
Yep.
Hashtag Bobby Jam's Kitchen on TikTok, or at Bobby Jam's Kitchen on TikTok and Instagram.
Bobby Jam's Kitchen, huh?
Yeah. So my family calls me Bobby. A lot of people call me Bobby because of that.
Yeah.
My niece made me bracelets. One of them said Bobby. Mm-hmm. The other one said Jam. And so
that was meant to be.
One of the girls I played for started calling me Bobby Jam because I play in a corporate band, and like we play downtown in private events and stuff.
Which are fantastic gigs, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's like, I want to be a rock star. I'm like, no, you don't. You want a corporate gig.
Yeah. What you want is the spice of life. You want the variety.
Yeah.
You want sessions. You want club gigs in town. Sleep in your bed.
Oh,
you want to do big gigs on the road and sleep in a hotel or on a bus. And you also want to do really big money gigs on the road and sleep in nice hotels and fly and do all that stuff.
Have it all.
All that to say, there's another guy named Rob in the band. So there's 2 Robs. Okay. So I became Bobby Jam.
That makes sense.
And he's Rob. So
nice.
He's been on this podcast before. Excuse me.
Sorry,
choked on my own beer.
Blowing up over here. Oh, kids.
Oh, yeah.
So I need to know more about you. I mean, we met a long time ago, but like, what's your story?
I don't know. I really like music. Mm-hmm. I play guitar. I play bass. I sing.
Got an awesome hat.
I do have an awesome hat. Shout out to Crown Heads. Wes Thornton gave me this hat. Crown Heads is a local company. Okay. They're big supporters of music and musicians.
Right.
And I'll be sure to post my flyer for my jazz gig at the cigar bar.
You got a jazz gig?
Yeah, it's
That's where all those chops came from.
I guess. I do about once every quarter.
Nice.
So I have to like relearn what. So this is another thing about me. You want to know about me?
Okay.
I am what my friend Wes Stevenson, he didn't call me that. He called himself, he is a liar. He called himself a musical liar. What he is the best musician I've ever met. I am a musical liar.
Okay.
I can make the informed person believe that I know it all.
Hey, they're the one that pay the bills.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I've always, on a serious note, I've always wanted to be able to, whoever is on the other end of that phone saying, "Can you?" I want whatever comes next to not matter because I want to be able to.
Yeah.
If it's Kurt Carr, like, L.A. Gospel, or if it's a Pantera tribute band, or if Morris Day and the Time need a guitar player, or whatever, Jason Aldean, like any of that. I like all music.
Yeah,
there's certain artists from all the genres that I don't like.
Yeah.
That's not important. What's important is that I do like it all, and there's plenty of good stuff out there. And I get bored doing too much of just one avenue. You know, like it's from stylistically speaking. So, like, some days I want to learn Charlie Parker. Some days I want to learn Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. Some days I want to learn, I don't know, Alex Lifeson. Yeah. All days I want to learn Alex Lifeson. Monster. I'm a fan.
Speaking of all
Did you see that sweet poster I have over there?
Where we got? Oh, yeah. Okay.
The double necks poster.
Nice.
It's a cool one.
That's like back in the day.
Dude.
Check that out.
That's like Farewell to Kings era.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Big fan. This podcast
best band live ever.
Dude. This podcast is a huge proponent of the two most underrated guitar players of all time, which is, in my opinion, Alex Lifeson and Dean DeLeo. Part writing, authenticity, stylistic integrity.
Their writing, like I was in when that era happened. Of course, I'm a child of the '80s, so like when that era happened, I was so upset. And, like you spend all this time like getting really good and all of a sudden it's like all these dudes in flannels and they're just
sloppy long hairs.
But Alice in Chains and STP came out, and I remember those two bands. I was like, okay, like that's when I like, obviously with all the bands I've grown up with and, all the classic rock stuff, there's amazing writers, but like in that era, and I appreciate them all now. Like I would look back and I'm like, oh yeah, those guys were freaking brilliant.
Yeah, even the ones that at the time you thought you didn't like,
even like Nirvana and all that stuff I hated as a kid. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. But STP, man, like that came out and I was like, this band is freaking really good.
And they so that third record, I think that's one that they were. Scott was supposedly sober for when they recorded, and his voice was sounded like a totally different dude. Is the one with the Lady Picture Show and Big Bang Baby and all that stuff. Amazing record, Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart. That's on that song and a couple of the ones at the end of the record. He kind of sounds like the first two records, but even still, it's so weird and so good.
Yeah,
and then the last two records, and then the stuff that came out in 2010. They made that sixth record. I forget what it's called. Yeah. Also great. It's just Stone Temple Pilots.
Those brothers are such good writers, man. He was great in what was the band they did? Velvet
freaking
Revolver.
Robert wrote a lot of those chord progressions too, like Interstate Love Song. That's Robert DeLeo. I saw him post on Instagram not too long ago where he was like playing this some handmade Brazilian classical guitar somebody made for him. Yeah. And he like wrote that progression on there, so he was just kind of playing through it. And I was like, oh, you son of a bitch. Not only are you the bass playingest dude from the 90s, sorry, Flea, but you also wrote all the cool guitar parts and chords.
It's such good songwriting. Like everything about that band was just really good.
It's almost like a classical sense to their songwriting. Yeah. And especially in regards to the bass part, it's almost like counter melody. Yeah. And it drew my ear a lot. Even as a guitar, I didn't even play bass when I was really getting into Stone Temple Pilots as a younger man. But like I was drawn to the drumming and the bass playing, and Eric Kretz plays so far on the backside of the beat without dragging somehow. Man, I'm Stone Temple Pilots tangent. There's live recordings of Vasoline. Yeah. Have you ever heard any of them where it's a somewhere in Vasoline. Yeah. And they held that pause a little longer. The first time I heard that, that was like one of the sickest things. I was like, Oh, okay. These guys get it.
Well, and not only that, but like he was one of the first guys to like that sound he got was just enormous. But like those trippy chords, like everything just came through. It's like, how do you have a sound that big, but like your guitar is still totally like everything about that or those albums were just, they're amazing, man. I mean, really, really, really good writing.
The breadth of tones that Dean would use, like often. Maybe not often, but certainly in multiple instances, a guitar solo will change tones 3 times where it's obviously 3 different guitars and amps, you know, it's like something you can't pull off live, but we're in a studio. Let's use what we've got available.
I recently, last year, I think I redid a Plush video. I taught Plush, and then I found the isolated track, and it was just like, there's so much cool stuff going on underneath. And Alice in Chains, too. Like, when you listen to the Alice in Chains track, it's like, God, there's so much cool stuff underneath everything else that makes it like, oh, okay, that's how that's why it sounds so big. And, yeah, those guys are... That's my favorite thing about YouTube at this point is isolated guitar tracks. You listen to those albums, and you're like, my God. Like, the Van Halen stuff is just like, okay, so you're 22. Like, how on earth did you do that?
22 and reinventing the guitar on a daily basis.
I mean, any of that stuff. There's so many good. The Hendrix stuff that's on there too. Like, I've learned a ton of Hendrix tunes, and then you go back and you listen to the isolated tracks, and you're like, it's even cooler than what I thought was on the album.
Playing like Jimi Hendrix. I know something that you've definitely talked about in depth on your YouTube channel, and it's so tricky because it's just the right combination of straight up don't give an F, and the upside down, or the backwards thing, I think has something to do with it. I don't know if it's just like synapses are different, right side to left side of your brain, or what. There's something to it, because all those left-handed dudes strung correctly or upside down, there's just something to it. The upside down makes the most sense to me, because you're using the opposite mechanic to do the
bending and all that.
So like guys like Eric Gales,
freaking dude, Jesus,
that guy, it's
terrifying. Like, so good.
And like when he does little like improv chord stuff, and it turns all classical and shit. It's like,
and then straight to gospel, and then straight to jazz, and then back to blues. You're just like, what freaking ever.
That dude's a freak. There's so many freaks.
There is. In this town, you can't even like throw a beer and not hit a freak.
Right.
Yeah. They're all...
Shout out to all you freaks out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's really amazing to like, I think a lot of people appreciate music, but when you come to a town where like, it's like everybody challenges each other in the right way. But it's not like LA where people like, some people have attitude.
Was your move straight from LA to here?
Well, I lived in Newport, so I was south of LA, but just that vibe, right? LA, it's like, and LA's an interesting thing. There's attitude, and the people can just be so unbearable. But at the same time, I think a piece of that is everyone's trying so hard just to make it. You really don't have time to do anything else, because you're 400 square foot apartment is, $3,500 a month.
It's like the same thing with New York.
Right.
All the time that you have to spend getting from one place to the other.
Right. And so, there's all that stuff. But when you come out here, it was so refreshing, because the talent level is way beyond what's in LA. I mean, LA, there's some great people, but concentration wise, but the people are cool, like like
small town vibes.
Yeah, it is. I remember like one of my trips out, I got to know, Greg Walton at STS, he would always tell me about all these different players in town or whatever. And I remember on my first night, my family and I came out here, and then my family went home, and Greg's like, stay a couple extra days, and we'll go out and see some bands or whatever. And so my first night in town, Ryan Warner had come into XTS and he's like, hey, my dad's playing tonight with Jack Pearson. You should come check it out at the station. And I was like, I don't know who any of these players are. So
you got to see Steve and Jack in the same
right.
night, bro.
Dude. And so I walk in and I was like, wow, like Jack, it was an acoustic set first. And so Steve and Jack played a full acoustic set. And
just a duo?
Yeah. The two of them playing. And Steve, in his own right, is just terrifying at guitar. Like, I was just like...
He's terrifying in whatever aspect you want to look at him.
Totally, right? And then, and so, like, Jack just cut him loose, and it was amazing. And then Jack got up and played, his whole thing, whether it's classic rock or gospel or whatever. And it was
he doing organ trio at that time?
Yeah.
Okay. With Charles and Josh?
Yep. So good. Like... religious experience. And then so that ended early, and then he's like, well, we should go to the Family Wash. And so we went to the Family Wash, and then Rob McNally's band was playing. I was just like, this is a Wednesday night in Nashville. Like, I am moving here. But it was like the most amazing concentration of talent that I'd ever seen. But then, through knowing Greg or whatever, we met everybody, and it was like everybody was so down to earth.
Totally.
So cool, zero attitude. Like Rob, I mean, like one of the coolest guys ever. But so much talent. It was just like so inspiring just to be able to walk into some random place and like it's every A-list session guy in town in one band,
Right.
It's just like, oh my God. But coming back and doing it a couple times, like that's how I met Guthrie Trapp. He was at the Family Wash watching a band, and it was like, I just walked right up to him, I'm like, oh, you're Guthrie Trapp or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And so we just hit it up and we talked for like hours, And when I would come back out, it was like we had one or two meetings, and then he was like, man, why don't you just stay at my house whenever you come out? And it was like that kind of like cool experience I had coming to town, and then he obviously introduced me to a million people, but
sure.
But like, he's another guy, like sitting around the house, seeing that guy play guitar, it was just like, oh my God, like this is a whole different level. And then watching him play live is just like, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
He is as they would back home, he's what they would call a motherfucker.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you know what I love about him the most is two things. A, he's one of those guys that like, exactly where he stands on everything. Like he just comes right out and says how he feels about it, which I love more than anything. But he also is super respectful when he's playing with people. Like he never like tries to, I mean, he could outplay just about anybody, but like I've seen him in so many different situations where he plays with somebody that maybe like isn't on a technical level. So he's like, cool. He like backs off a little bit. But
plays to the audience.
Yeah. But then when they like step it up, he's like, oh, okay. And then goes to that next level. And it's just like, he keeps going and going. And then, at some point I remember he called me and he's like, hey man, Kenny Greenberg's playing at the Acme. We got to go check him out. And I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah. So, they got up and they played together, and it was just like, holy crap. You know what I mean? It's like nowhere on earth are you going to see
that.
Oh, it was, well, and then I got to film them both. Like we filmed a whole, I think it was like 5 songs at Kenny's studio. It was him and Guthrie. It's on my YouTube channel or whatever, but it was,
I'll link to that.
It was amazing. It was like they wrote the songs and like they hung out like twice and wrote 5 songs, had this epic band playing, but it was just like, it makes you realize that, the human thing, like the creative aspect of what humans can do when they're in a good environment and it's like the right kind of competition and everything. It's just like the things that they can do it's so mind boggling, And for a musician, I mean, like, is there a better place on earth that you can imagine where there's just this much talent in one area?
Maybe not as diverse, and I used to think I was biased, but everybody that I meet that spent any time in Dallas says that about Dallas too. I feel like it was harder. It was harder in Dallas.
Yeah, well, because not as many places to go. Like the machine,
the ceiling
here.
is a lot lower.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do the corporate band thing, in which case that's the best place to be.
Well, yeah. Because, one of my buddies from Oklahoma, when I taught there, they would start doing gigs in Dallas, and it's like, bro, you're making real, man, money doing a freaking 3 nights a week in a corporate gig. Yeah. Like, everybody's like wanting to chase that rock star dream, and I'm like, bro, you're making like what most of these people make.
What do you want, a nice mortgage, or do you want to sleep in a van and play 20 minutes as main supports?
Yeah, exactly.
But
like coming home with not that much. Well, corporate man, he's like, bro, I drive 2 hours to the gig, but I come home and it's like I got real man money in my pocket. And in LA too, man, that a lot of the session guys just stop doing that whole world because it's like, dude, I can play in a corporate gig in one night and make huge money.
Couple sessions worth.
Yeah,
you can make it some money. Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on your outfit, I suppose.
Well, and depending on the gigs or whatever, but like, there's cats that I met working through it divided by 13, and they come in and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm in a corporate band or whatever. It's like, oh, how much you make? And they tell you, and you're just like, holy crap.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, right, because it's you playing music, it's fun, but there's not there's that you can relax because you're not trying to have to make it, and you get to play and it's fun, and these guys made enough money to where it's like I work 8 hours a week and I play guitar the rest of the time for fun.
That's the life.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's, or being like doing, I'm fortunate in that way too, like doing the whole YouTube thing or whatever and selling courses. It's like, I'm nowhere near any of what the people are in town as a player or whatever, but it's like, there's so many ways to do it now that I think, yes, you should aspire to be as good as you can be. And if, being playing the world is your dream, by all means chase it. But now you don't have to give up once you get to a certain point.
Yeah, there's not the 14 gigs, and if you don't get one, you're screwed.
Yeah, right? Or if you get to, 35 or 40 years old, like that's when I started, YouTube and all that other stuff. And it's like, one of my buddies told me, he's like, if you get to 35 and you haven't made it playing music, just stop and do something else. And I was like, 35 was always my number, but I was fortunate enough to where, one of the kids I went to high school with ended up being like the biggest YouTube guy ever.
That's definitely helpful.
And it helped.
Deer and beer.
What do we got here?
We've got an Italian Pilsner.
Ah, grazie.
Only is made in Memphis.
It's all right. Spirit, right?
It's really, I really like it. I hadn't had it before.
Nice and light.
And I was like, I don't know what you'll like, so I'll get something that everyone could drink, and I'll get the crazy IPA, and here we are. So, before I had to cut off with the thing, you were talking about you just happened to grow up with the best YouTube guy ever.
Yeah. So, and this is an interesting story. I guess my point being, if you love music, it's really good. There's always a way to make it work, right? And so I remember this guy, his name, everybody probably knows who he is, but his name's Marty Schwartz. And he's like, it's one of those like blue unicorn stories where it just was the right place at the right time. Like I remember he played my wedding, his band played my wedding. And he's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like struggling to make it and whatever. And he's like, but there's this thing called YouTube and I'm going to like explore doing it or whatever. And I remember calling him like 6 months later. I'm like, man, how's the YouTube and, all that stuff working out? And he laughed. And I was like, oh, it's working. So
I know that laugh.
Yeah, right. And it was interesting to that point to where, my whole life and most of the musicians around me, you envision yourself having success in a certain way, right? Sure. You're in a band, you make it, you're traveling the world, you're doing all this stuff.
Well, guys our age, it's like you're either in a huge band or you're playing at VFWs.
Yeah.
And there's no in between.
There's no in between.
That's what I knew growing up.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden there was this other avenue that if you knew how to play your cards right, you could turn views into money. You know what I mean? And on your own terms though, which is different. There's no gatekeeper. It was
total content curation.
Yeah, it was content curation, knowing how to turn eyeballs into money. But like that whole thing was like, oh, this is a totally different, and you didn't have to be and it's not saying you shouldn't strive to be as good as you can be, because absolutely you should, but you don't have to be the world's greatest guitar player to resonate with people.
Totally. Or not only that, but also have something like a value to offer them.
Right. And so, that was like a really eye-opening experience to me. I was like, wait a minute, I can still do this, but have the flexibility to stay at home, or like not have to go out on the road.
Have the flexibility to do whatever you want. Say yes when you want to, and no when you want.
Well, and even friends here in town, that were really struggling to do one particular vision. I'm like, dude, you're already like established over here. Like, work that angle and develop you as a brand. Like, dude, and then you can do whatever you want.
So did you start making videos before you moved here?
Oh, yeah.
Because you've been doing it for what, at least 12, 12
yeah, like I think 11, it started
12
in
years?
2010.
Okay, so yeah, like 12 years.
Yeah, and so Marty, had me come down.
That's awesome. That's like ground level.
Well, right. And it was interesting. And at that time, it was like, what can you do on YouTube? And like, what are you getting to get in trouble doing? Because like back in the day, you couldn't do certain stuff, and you're like, you could be shut down,
But as far as like copyright infringement, or
because nobody knew, like everyone was still like, oh, you're stealing my music, and it's like, no, I'm actually promoting you.
Yeah, like, I'm just showing someone how to play this song that they already love.
Yeah, exactly. That are gonna buy your records. So.
But probably already did.
Yeah, but that was like the Wild West. So it was like, oh, can I do this? Well, I'll just find out nobody else is doing this, Right. And so it was the right place at the right time, but like also putting in the effort to consistently, go after what you wanted,
You were doing pretty short videos at first too.
You only could do
whatever.
You only could do like 10-minute videos.
Really?
Yeah, you had to get to a certain strata before that you got an extra time limit. Then it was like 15, and then after that, this is way back in the day. And so after that, after you got a certain amount of subscribers, then they gave you more time or whatever.
Interesting.
And so for a long time, it was like the
blue check mark before blue check mark.
It was the 10-minute video, and there was no monetizing anything. It was all just to create eyeballs. But like if you knew how to market and how to get people to your website or whatever it is that you had, you could sell something, right? And so through doing that and just like, I had a full-time job making amps divided by 13 for years. So I would go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had to be there at 6 o'clock, and I would work till 3. And then my wife got done at 6, so I'd watch my kids from 3 to 6, hang out with her till about 9. And then at 9 or 10 o'clock, I would go to my friend's chiropractic office, who let me use a room, and I would stay there till like 2 in the morning. I would learn a song and then see if I could break it down and do it in 10 minutes, right? And then go home and do it all over again the next day. And that was,
Bro, I'm tired just hearing
that. So like that was like 2 or 3 years of doing that. And then all of a sudden it just started like, Marty's like, well, why don't you take over this one channel that I'm doing for a little while and teach, whatever you want. And then he would kind of like, you should try doing this or you should try doing that. And so I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I would just implement, so he was like an incredible mentor, But at the same time, when somebody like that, just like in the music industry, they show you or tell you something, it's like, you gotta do it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people that should make it don't, just because they blow their own foot off.
Sure.
They want to do it their way, and that's the only way. And it's like, no. If somebody that has been successful does it and is giving you an opportunity, like, let me help you leapfrog to the next spot, listen to what that person's saying, and I think that's huge in music or
especially
whatever it is.
In this town, man.
Oh my God. Like, it's connections, right? Like the session world, there's
relationships. It really doesn't matter what
there's a handful of guys And if one of those dudes is like, hey man, you should do this. Like, you listen to that guy.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, I think if there's one thing I could just break down to,
You at least walk down the street a minute and see what he's talking about.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Like, you don't have to lose your soul. Like, if it's something that you completely vehemently disagree with, then okay, whatever. Like, if it's crossing a line that's like you're, you know, that's going against everything you believe, then obviously don't do it. You know,
like if you're used to playing guitar at church and then I don't know, Marilyn Manson or somebody wants to hire you.
Don't do that. But but
that's the only example that I could come up with. I'm sorry, my brain has better days.
So random story.
Good.
But
perfect.
since you brought that up, so one of my best friend in high school, his wife's best friend, her sister, married him.
Okay. Interesting.
Holy moly. I mean, dude, like the stories that you hear, you're like,
every story that I've ever heard, and I've known some people that have had like a lot of experience with him as well. It's like eccentricity embodied. Just the most eccentric dude I've ever heard about.
And so my friend was like, man, every experience I ever had with him, he was a dude in a flannel that was super cool. But the wife's perspective, and he would tell stories, and I was just like, wow, that's just a trip. Like, if you're ever fortunate enough to be in that position, that like where you've made it and you're making money and you're doing what you love to do, just freaking be cool. Like, right?
It's pretty easy to do. There have been people that have shown, Dimebag and Vinny are two that come to mind.
Yeah.
The two that I had interaction with, where it's like they owned the city and they were still totally cool.
Why wouldn't you be?
I don't know. It's one thing if you're, let's say, you're Britney Spears and you are a child and you become the most famous person in the world, and it's a little different than in like, a Michael Jackson, but it's a similar level of you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. Maybe then it's like you just kind of like got to be standoffish just because otherwise you'll never have a moment to yourself. But if you're, I don't know, Axl Rose, it's like take a picture with somebody, or if you're Joe Bonamassa, and he's always been super cool. I've never heard anything bad about him. But I'm saying if you're Joe Bonamassa, you're going to get recognized.
Yeah.
And when those people recognize you, just be cool.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pick on Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah.
That was just a non-Justin Bieber that came to mind.
It's that world is really, really strange. You know what was interesting?
I wouldn't even begin to understand.
No, and it's weird. Like, I find myself fortunate. I grew up in Newport Beach, so I grew up around really elite people my whole life. And I think, just knowing people there or being in, I saw like the backside of show business. When I was a kid, I moved back to California and I got in a band with a Nickelodeon star. And I remember going to Britney's. We actually hung out with Britney's mom, which was a whole different.
We'll save that story for after.
Whole different
the
story. It was hilarious, but it was what I love about it was seeing a side of things where you're like, you know what, maybe that's not all it's cracked up to be. You know what I mean? Like you look up to these people and what they have, but like when you see it at a behind the curtain level, I think I was really fortunate to be like, yeah, I just don't want that. Like, I don't know. There's something in me was like, no, I don't need that. If I'm going to do it, there's got to be another way. And sure. I think in this day and age with the availability of things like YouTube and Spotify and all these other things, I think music and musicians are in such a unique place to where if you can captivate an audience, there's no gatekeeper for you.
Totally.
If you can write a really good song, you can play something.
You still kind of need to be able to do some of the functions of a record label, but you don't have to have record label budgets to get it done.
No, you don't. And here's the
you need to know marketing.
No, you do.
And
so that's the thing. That's the missing piece where I think a lot of musicians don't put enough of their time and investment into. It's like, you're your own brand and your own business. Learn how to make yourself a thing. Yeah. And if your thing generates a certain amount of eyeballs and a certain amount of money, people with money are like, well, that's a no-brainer. It's already working. Yeah, sure. I can, push a little money into that, and I know it's already going to work. Our nanny's a great example. She was like so I think she got like top 20 American Idol or whatever. But like I saw her play the other day, and I was like, holy crap, like she's really freaking talented. But it was like, in this situation, like I know people, it's like, check this person out, and they're like, oh my God, she's freaking amazing. It's that simple. You know what I mean? Like if you put I think the whole thing I'm trying to say is just put yourself out there.
Sure.
You're going to immediately, the great thing about YouTube or any of these other social media platforms is you're going to immediately see if you resonate with the masses. They'll tell you right away. Like if I put out a YouTube video and everybody's like, that was amazing, light bulb moment, I'm like, oh, well, there we go. I need to go down that road.
Sure.
Or whatever. And it's not, it's not.
Or if you put a video out and it's crickets. And
yeah,
like,
right. Okay, that maybe.
That dart missed the board.
Exactly. And so it's really cool because you never have to sell your soul to like get to where you want to go in that world, because they just tell you, and it's still something you enjoy doing. And it's like, oh, well, they enjoyed that thing that I enjoy doing more.
Sure.
So why not? I'll just go down that road, So I think musician wise,
it's a nice outlook.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I think there's so much potential for people to do it their own way that they really should examine that paradigm of the industry and whatever. If you can generate enough on your own, they'll come to you.
I think that people are doing that more and more these days. And they have been slowly but surely. And obviously record labels are going to fight kicking and screaming, and they still have the capital to, like, they still control terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
So
but
if your goal is to be a pop star, you better look at people like Billie Eilish and people like that while sure their parents are in the entertainment industry loosely. I forget exactly what her parents do, but they're not, they don't work at the bank and Walgreens. They're industry connected people, so they are likely able to influence their children and say, this is what I think, even if it's not going to work out for me. This is how you do this thing. But, it's...
But Bieber, you mentioned Bieber. He's an example of like, that was somebody they found on YouTube.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's that thing where it's like, oh, that. Because people that recognize talent, if they see it, they'll like, oh, that person right there. You know what I mean? To where before, that was so much harder to do. It was so much harder to get noticed. You got to
get in your car and go somewhere.
You had to get in your car and go somewhere. You had to like beat down the door of a club owner to like beg to let you be there, or even sell tickets to have to basically pay to get people to see
in LA,
you.
You're paying to play,
bro. Paying to play, right? And so...
Play at the whiskey? Cool. $400.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll pay me $400? No, bro.
Yeah.
You pay us.
Yeah, right? And if you don't sell, you're SOL. You know what I mean? And so...
But if you do the things that Brett Papa's saying and you know to market yourself, then you can pay to play at the whiskey and you can have your fans attend and buy your merchandise.
Yeah, right? And so
you should.
I'm hopeful for people out there. There's a way to do it.
You're a good person to look to see what to do.
Business skills, business marketing, like copywriting, marketing, like think of yourself as a brand and a business, not just an artist. And then listen.
You can't be one without the other.
No, you can't. And that's what the industry is. They're that other part of the machine. If you come into that world with an idea of how that world works too, it's so much better for you in the end. Because then you can call BS when you see it and you're like, no, don't even go there. Like, I know what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? You want to have it. The opportunity is there if you want it. You know what I mean? So really, if you want to do music as a thing, you have to think big picture. You have to think every part of that equation. Getting good at an instrument is one thing.
Yeah, just shedding in your room is not going to get you where you want to go.
No, it's not. And
you got to shed on that internet too.
And just be cool. You know, like I remember when I was working at Divided by 13, one of the guys from the MD from Avril Lavigne came in, and he wanted to bow out of the band or whatever. And they were looking for a replacement. And I'm like, so what's the deal, you know, with that whole thing? And he's like, man, I suck as a guitar player. I am not good. There's nothing special about me. He's like, Avril hired me because of my hair. She thought I had a cool haircut. But he's like, you know, once you get that gig, you know, you take it seriously because it's a high paying gig or whatever. But he's like, don't ever underestimate the hang. It's 30% skill and 70% hang because you're on this bus with these people for
or in an airplane or
whatever,
in an Uber,
right?
In a green room.
And think of Avril, like she had a hit record. You're on the road for a year, and he's like, be cool. Like that's number one what I'm looking for because I can get any guitar player in the world that I want, but I can't always get a cool one. And he's like, if you're cool, that's like the biggest foot in the door. Then we'll figure out if you can play, and then like if you got like the whole package, you know what I mean? Right. Then it's like, okay, so but that cool factor gets you into that smaller pool already.
Well, and it should be noted that cool doesn't mean, hey, look at me, look how cool I am. It means be respectful of other people's space and time.
Exactly.
And just
absolutely
be respectful.
Those what you said absolutely is what should be at the forefront of people's mind. You know, when you have the opportunity like that, don't ever take that for granted.
Don't get complacent. Don't get late. If you're on, let's say you're on a gig like that for 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's say you're on a gig like that for 10 years. I've seen so many dudes, not so much chicks, they're better at it, but dudes get let go for getting comfortable and being like, oh, like this is my gig. I can do whatever I want.
It's never your gig.
No, bro.
Not in that industry.
Is your name on the sign?
Yeah,
I bet
exactly.
it's not. I bet no one would notice if you were gone. That pays for those tickets. I bet they wouldn't notice.
And there's 50 guys that'll take your place for cheaper.
Half the money.
Yeah. Right.
With better haircuts. Anytime, I mean, the only haircut I have is one where there's no hair.
Right.
There's no hairs to cut.
Unless you're Sean Tubbs and you never age. You're like 50-something and you look like a 30.
Well, here's my problem.
And can play like the devil freaking gave you a contract to sell your soul.
This thing makes me look older. I have a baby face, but who wants to see it?
Yeah. I do. What's it look like?
That's not great.
Yeah. But you can do a lot with that. That can be stylistic.
Man, I've done a lot with this in my life. This is not my first rendezvous with the beard. I've done the goatees. I've done all beards and goatees of various lengths and colors.
I've never gone that far, but like I've had the handlebars and the whole.
You had I remember the handlebar videos. That's when I first saw your videos. You had the handlebars.
That's how it started. Marty, he walked in. When I worked at Divided by 13, we were getting him an amp, and he came in. He's like, "Do not shave that off." And I was like, "Okay." And then so back in the day, I had the moniker Papa Stash or whatever, and he's like, "Officially, from this day forward, you are Papa Stash." And I was like, "Okay, whatever."
Deal.
And it's
seems to have worked out quite nicely. Actually, I have some bullet points. I wanted to add some questions I want to ask you about.
Please.
Some things. Let me look at my time here. Okay, and then I to follow it, to end it all up, I have some fun, quick fire kind of questions too. Here we go. So we've already established you about 12 years now. 2010, you said you started doing your YouTube thing, and you're at what, like 250 30 something thousand subscribers.
I had 2 channels, but
What's the
main one is now it's just my name, Brett Papa.
Yeah, that's the one that I know.
And that's like 230, 240. I don't know.
What's the other one?
It doesn't matter these days. It's not mine anymore. So.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you sell all your courses through your website.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but you still have so much free content on YouTube, and if you guys are not familiar, which you probably are, you should definitely look it up because it doesn't matter. One of the things that I thought about your content is like there's stuff for people who don't know what to do with a guitar, and there's stuff for people who are working in the industry playing guitar. Just the wide net that you're casting, like you're breaking down solos, you're talking about concepts for theory, you're getting other people to come on and talk about their approach to music and thinking, and there's anything from 10-minute videos to hour plus videos, and
right, depending on the coffee.
It's hey man, it's so much content, but it's all seems to be very authentically you. Do you just get a wild hair and you're like, okay, I'm gonna that's a cool idea, I'm gonna make a video on that, or is it a product of your own evolution as a player, just whatever you're into and working on, you're like, oh, this would be cool to make a video.
Right.
Let's say you're trying to learn the solo to manic depression or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is great. You know what? I should do a whole course on Hendrix.
Right.
Is that how it comes about? Or
yeah, I mean, okay, so that since this is the last thing you said, the Hendrix stuff, I think I hit that sweet spot of like back in the day, nobody was teaching Hendrix. And so I started teaching Hendrix and then I started noticing things like, oh, that's how that works. Like just dumb things that I was like, in my own mind made it simple for me to understand.
Sure.
Like, oh, he's playing this chord and around this chord, he's playing, either this scale or this, chord shape or whatever. That's how Little Wing, came to be or whatever. And, maybe that's not how Jimmy thought about it, but in my own mind, it was a way to like link it together so I could like possibly understand like the genius of what was going on. Right.
Yeah,
but
trying to break down something otherwise not breakdownable.
Right. Exactly. And so, when I would put stuff like that out, like I said, you have an instant, feedback loop. And people would be like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, I never thought of it that way, but that's, that makes so much sense or whatever. So in my mind, I keep a log of like what people resonate with, when I remember, going out to Wild West Guitars, this killer place back in the day in California. My buddy was a guitar repairman there or whatever. And Guthrie was there.
That guy's a beast.
Oh, dude. Such a monster. But anyways, we were hanging out with him backstage and I was like, bro, like how do you know the fretboard so well? Like, what's your story? Like, that's insane. Like, you can do any kind of music and you just like, that fretboard like nothing else. He's like, oh, go home and look up the cage system. And I was like, what the hell is that? Right. And so I went home and I looked up the cage system and I saw like, I think it was like a True Fire video or whatever. And I was like, why is that not the very first thing somebody would show somebody when they wanted to solo? Like, it makes everything make sense, And so I put out a video and I can't remember. I think it's to this day my most popular video I've ever done. But it was like showing somebody. I didn't take the whole cage system. I took like 3 popular shapes. I took the E shape, the A shape, and the D shape of chords.
Yeah.
And I showed people how to drop their pentatonic scales around that. So I'm like, okay, so say you've got an E, A, and a D chord progression. If you take those 3 shapes of each of those chords and you drop it in that key's pentatonic scale, look at how easy it is to hit the notes that sound good, right? Or whatever. And that video just freaking blew up. And I was like, okay, so that's a thing. Like people, that helped people understand, how to see the fretboard in a certain way. Put that in the book. You know what I mean? And so through analyzing how to teach songs, because I've taught hundreds and hundreds of songs at this point.
I mean, you got your YouTube channel's got over 500 videos.
Well, yeah,
I can't imagine what your website's got.
No. Well, I mean, with that, and I had another channel that had like 400 songs on it, and I've taught. God, for Marty, I taught like 500. I mean, thousands of videos at this point. But you just kind of see what resonates with people,
Sure.
And when it came to my own brand and business, I'm like, well, these things keep popping up in comments or whatever. So apparently, I explain this in a way that people can understand. The fretboard.
Found the connection.
Found the connection, right? And it's like, it's right there. They tell you. That's what I'm saying with a band. Like if you put a song and your band put it out on YouTube and people are like, that's freaking amazing, and you see that 200 times in your video, it's like, that's probably a pretty good indication what the average person.
It's resonating with people.
So that was the big thing to kind of sidetrack. When I came here, I found that a lot of the players here, they were so locked into Nashville. Yeah. And it's like, you guys, there's a whole world outside of this town. Like you're competing against the cream of the crop at the very tippy top of what's possible in music. But like, if you're a fairly good musician here, chances are you're considered an incredible musician
in other places.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And if you can explain music in even a somewhat recognizable way to the masses, that's all that matters. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can teach a simple concept to somebody, and it resonates and people really get it, it's like, you've got something.
Deer and beer.
I had several questions, and I wanted to make sure I didn't have no engineer today to help me remember stuff. So, what are the lapel mics that you use in your live streams and stuff?
Okay, so do
you use them in all? Sometimes it's hard to tell if you have it on or not.
No, I do. They're the when I went to my buddy Eric Andreas, he's the guitar sage. He had these like cool. They look like a cigar almost. And they're made by Sennheiser, and it's like a digital pack, and they're tiny. They're like a small cigar, and there's a lapel side to it, and then there's an XLR on the other one. So like if you had like I have a Zoom recorder, you can plug it the receiver part in to the Zoom, and it has this little thing that you can tuck into your pocket. I forget what the brand is, but not the brand, the model, but they're Sennheiser, and they're freaking awesome. And like the cool thing is they have a USB-C plug in them. So if you're worried about running out of juice, you can plug that into it and still use it at the same time. Right. Oh. So it never runs out of battery if you don't, Wow. Yeah. So I was like, those are amazing. And they have a pretty good range, like, I don't know, like 30 or 40 feet,
Oh yeah, that's great. I definitely want to get one of those.
Oh, they're amazing. I have a Sweetwater page where all that stuff is on it or whatever.
Okay, well I'll link to that, and I think I saw that earlier, but I did not make that note in this. So you're set, and you've obviously moved and stuff, and the span of you making all these videos, when you're like putting a set together, is there something that you're thinking about, or are you just like wanting a clean looking space to sit in?
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
You know what's super interesting is when I worked in California, I had a buddy who did he was an animator for Hollywood movies, like he worked on like the Avengers and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. And he was really good at like visually constructing stuff. And so he made up a mock set for me, and it was really interesting. He had like a wood wall and white brick little thing, and he had like some records like on the wall. He basically did a 3D rendering of it, like what would be a cool set. was like, oh, that does look really cool. So, I had the wood wall, and I always liked that look. Like, ever since that got popular, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, because I like kind of natural looking stuff or whatever.
Is it a herringbone pattern or something like that?
Well, no, those are awesome. I do love that. I just have typical, like, I don't know. It's like, what is that? 5-inch wood panels or whatever, real
like
thin.
shiplap?
Yeah, like 8-inch.
Copy.
Wood paneling or whatever. And so
so many different backdrops in one day thanks to social media. I can't keep it straight.
Well, that's just it too. It's like, how do you keep? I'm one of those guys that's like super ADD. I love architecture and Dwell magazines and all these like cool, like, oh, that looks really cool. So and
it matters too for like the people, for viewers' eyes.
Yeah.
Like you want it to,
right. It's visually appealing, right?
Yeah, you want it to not only look good but like clear and clean and crisp and that, all those C words.
Well, and yeah, exactly. And when I moved to town, I had that wall that I had with the wood paneling or whatever, and it was interesting because when I moved into my studio, there was a brick wall in there already, and like I didn't even think about it at all, but at some point we're like, let's just paint it white, because I redid that. They had this trippy wood paneling all over, so I ripped that all out and put in drywall or whatever, and then I put the wood paneling in, and we had the white brick, and then we set it all up. My wife's really good at like shui, like feng shui kind of stuff, and she's like, she like kind of put everything together for me. And then it was funny because like after I put it all together, I'm like, holy crap, that's exactly what my buddy had put together years before.
That's awesome.
It was like the wood, like in the exact same. No, it did. It was so trippy. It was like the wood wall and the white brick, and it was even funny because he had me in the corner. He's like, you should be in the corner because it's like a good, you can you can blur the background easier and all this other stuff. And it was such a trip that like it happened that way. Like I wasn't even trying. It just ended up being that way.
Sure.
But then I had, there's a YouTube kind of like a network out here. They're called Made In Network. And one of the guys had come out and he's like, you should think about sitting a little bit away from the wall a little bit so there's some space. And if you want to blur it out.
Give you a little perspective.
Yeah, like all that kind of stuff,
lens,
right?
Yeah.
And so I was always really open to like, as I upgraded in cameras and started to understand lenses and focal lengths and stuff like that, I'm like, I want my stuff to look like, like I remember when I first got into it, I really liked elements of TrueFire. But then at some point I'm like, I want to be the boutique version of that. Like I want the camera angles to matter and the look and the feel. I want it to feel more like a documentary or like a film rather than just, some random guitar studio or whatever.
Yeah,
not to knock
24 frames a second.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And so, one of my buddies is like, well, you should shoot in 24 frames. And then the other guy's like, well, you should use a shorter focal length on your lens or whatever. And, so I started to understand all these things. And I'm like, eventually, my buddy's like, you should color it in this way or whatever. And so it's all these little elements because I always wanted it to be like, people are giving
Talking about color it in post, like
just a little bit, right?
It, yeah.
But I think at the end of the day,
I'm fighting a losing battle there. I'm color deficient.
I am too. I'm freaking retarded when it comes to all this stuff. Like I can barely press record and have stuff work. But like,
Amen.
But at the end of the day, I felt that there's all these people out there in the world and they've spent their hard-earned money on buying something from me. And at the end of the day, I'm like, the audio and the video and everything has to be as good as I can afford because these people are like working. Some of them are digging a ditch all day long and they're buying my freaking course. And it's like, it better be good.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's like
totally agree.
That kind of like feel to it. Obviously there's people that their stuff looks better or whatever. But to me, I'm like,
not many at this point.
Well, I'm just trying to strive to like get to
you're trying to please yourself. You want to feel
and
as good as you can about what you're giving.
Like at the end of the day when I release something, I'm like, that's as good as I could have done. Like, and I'll take a year or two on a course to get it done. Or my buddy that does all my audio, it's like that's an expense I don't need to pay,
Sure.
but like, it's so good when I get it back. I'm like, he's worth every cent. And my customers, right, that pay for it, they like it too, because they tell me all the time. And it's like,
well, and that whether they are looking at it as getting value, they're seeing the value with the feedback that they love the way it sounds.
And it's like, well, man, if they dig that, then I'm going to the best of my ability, I'm going to provide whatever it is that they can, because it's fun for me too. Like, he'll send me audio back and I'm like, dude, that sounds, we did an Alice in Chains video. We did They Die Young or whatever that song's called. And I was like, that guitar tone is so good. And so I got as close as I could to it. But then he sent it back and I'm like, dude, that sounds like the freaking album. Like, it is so close. And that's always been one of my favorite guitar tones. The facelift guitar tone has always been one of my favorite tones.
It's a really interesting tone, man.
It's so good, right? But like, or the Van Halen stuff, like, how do you recreate Van Halen? It's the best freaking guitar tone of all time.
It depends on what era. And there's a bunch of different ways to go about it.
Right? But so that, like, he'll sit there and he'll tweak it until he can get it super close. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, man, people deserve it all. Like, if they're going to, or like, you know, I would imagine like an artist who appreciates their fans. It's like, they deserve the best. Rush is a perfect example. You can't get a better live show than Rush. You know, they everything is thought of, right? There's freaking lights, there's sound, there's everything to make that show as good as it can be. They want to give their fans.
It's the quality that kept them around for 4 decades. You know?
How did they make that much sound?
Very carefully and
But
thoughtfully.
I mean, like, before tracks were tracks, like they
Getty was triggering tracks.
Yeah, a little bit. But like, I remember back in the day, like
synths.
when I was seeing them, they were like playing with their feet. You know, it's just like, really? Like, you're playing bass, you're singing, and you're playing lines with your feet.
And doing all at a higher level than most people will ever do.
With laser lights and freaking things blowing out and like...
And washing machines behind you and whatever.
So good.
Mullets. All kinds of different adversity to fight through.
Why not, you know?
So, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off if you had another thought on that.
No, I'm good, man.
So, specifically, I want to know about the short film at the beginning of the Bond theme video. Okay,
so that was my buddy Nick, the guy I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
That's
the animator guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was all his. He's like, you should do soundtracks. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, man. So we did a bunch. Like, what do we do? We did the Darth Vader theme where he put me in the Death Star.
The only one I've seen. So there's a series of those?
Dude, he put me in like the Star Wars 1 theme when he's out in the desert and he's like looking at the 2 moons and he's like, you know, all sad. He literally put me in that scene and it looks like I'm there. Like he's amazing.
I was going to say, I was wondering if you had a background in film because of how good it looked.
No. So this is my buddy Nick, who's amazing. He has a channel. God, I wish I remember what it was, but his channel is like starting to blow up on
Send
TikTok
it to me and I'll link it.
But he was always that, you know, it was interesting because he consistently was ahead of the curve on everything when it comes to YouTube. He's like, you need to do top 5 videos. You need to do all these. And I wish to God I would have listened to him because I'd probably be 10 times bigger than I was. But like, he just loves all of that stuff. Like, he loves the look of things. He loves like,
he's an aesthetics guy.
Yeah, totally. And not only that, but like, how can the little guy become the big guy, you know? And so, you know, he understood marketing, all this other stuff. But anyways, the James Bond stuff, he was always like, you need to do movie themes. We were going to do like Raiders of the Lost Ark because we had a really long hall where I worked. And he's like, dude, I can put that big ball rolling down after you. Like, we can do everything. So we basically set up a green screen and then, you know, we did, you know, the office where I worked, like the James Bond theme was in that office. And so most of that.
So the set was your office.
Was our office. And then the other parts, like where I jumped out of the window or whatever, how did he do that? I think he had a green screen there. And then he filmed like the window. And then when I came into it, he like had the green screen there so he could have the glass shattering. And like he did all this 3D rendering and crazy stuff.
Lots of work on his end, sounds like.
Freaking dude. Like, well, so in like the Avengers, he was the guy that did like the Hulk. Like, and so he really understood like how to do all of this, 3D,
all the perspective,
all
right?
that stuff, right?
It didn't look like green screen work.
No, and so he was like, just trust me, like, do what I'm telling you to do, and it'll be awesome.
I'm more impressed now that I know that.
Right? And so I was like, okay, whatever. And it's fun. Like, I've acted before or whatever. So I was like, yeah, man, that'll be fun. Like, why not? Like, I've taught a million songs. Why not just do something different or whatever? So
have fun with it, man.
Yeah, no, it was cool.
It came across.
No, it was super fun. So, yeah, man. Like, another thing, like, like my buddies, like, you should do this. And I was like, okay, why not? That's a great thing. Like, even this,
listen to your buddies. That's the point,
right? This is your show. You can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? And there's no reason that whoever you are out in the world at this point, do what you want to do. And if it works, freaking awesome. Then you get to do what you want to do. If not, whatever. Like, do what you want to do, and then have a plan B or whatever. But like, there's no reason you can't try. At this point,
there's no reason that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, it can all seem very daunting, and what worth doing isn't at least a little scary or kind of hard. Like, people are like, "Oh, that guy just plays guitar for a living. I mean, it must be the life." It's like, but they don't know about you working 8 hours divided by 13, right, and then watching your kids, and then hanging out and having a relationship with your wife, and then leaving and going to freaking learning how to make videos.
It's just
like, they don't think about that.
No, but at the same time, like, I think if you're doing what you love to do for a certain amount of time, like, you have that extra energy.
Totally.
But our conversation earlier, I was asking you about sourdough bread, and you're like, oh, I saw some video, and it's like, that was a dude. And it's like, oh, what should I do? I'll put a sourdough video on YouTube, and there you have it. See, you learned how to do it.
If you can teach somebody how to do something,
anything,
those skills that you can teach are valuable.
Oh, totally.
And if especially if, like, someone like yourself who understands how to take the skill and then present it in a way that resonates with people, if you can do that, it doesn't. I mean, the rest it's cake.
Yeah, and if you're able to walk into a crowd of people or at a party and you can make people laugh, and you also have a skill, it could be construction, whatever. If you can be that person and teach a skill, whatever it is, to people, you have a chance at doing something. You don't have to be funny, but like, or you're captivating, or you're a good speaker, or whatever. There is no reason in this day and age that you can't turn that into something. You know what I mean? There's no excuse. YouTube can show you everything you've ever wanted to know in your life.
YouTube can show you how to be good at YouTube.
There's plenty of videos.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, that's a great tip. Like playlists or whatever it is, or tagging or any of this stuff like that.
When it comes down to it, it's all important.
It's all there, right? Well, it does matter, and just take pride in what you do. The one thing I would say to anybody, if you're wanting to do anything, make it sound good. It does. The look isn't as important as the sound.
Especially if it's something music related, you're trying to show somebody how to play something. If I can't hear it, it doesn't help.
Or if you're in like a super echoey room or something like that, like just figure out.
Your mics are out of phase or, or whatever.
Buy a moving blanket and put it off screen just so there's not sound bouncing all around. That will push you heads and shoulders above millions of people.
One of the things that was a sticking point that took me a long time, a lot longer than I wanted to start this podcast and I don't have super good equipment,
It's good enough.
I was going to say, it's good enough that I can take it, and I spent enough hours learning how to engineer audio. Yeah. So, I feel like it gets better and better. So, sometimes, like the last episode I released, I think I'm going to re-release because for some reason the dialogue audio just seems very quiet to me, and it did not when I was mixing it. I don't know what happened there, but it's something I'm trying to quality control as best I can. I'm the cook and the janitor and the CFO and the CEO and the dishwasher and you do know.
Well, I do.
And so I do everything myself pretty much regardless of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If I can do it, I do it.
Yeah.
If I can't do it, I learn how to do it.
Yeah.
The more I can control, the easier it is for me to achieve what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And especially on a guitar playing budget, it's like I can't hire Chris Lord Alge to come engineer all these podcasts. No offense to Lyndon. Lyndon's great at Lyndon's a lot of the reason that it sounds good, and this will hopefully still sound good. So he
doesn't have the attitude of Chris
maybe
Lord Alge.
I don't have the Coen brothers to write my script, but there's not a script, but
yeah.
My point is, you don't have to be exactly where you want to end up to start.
No.
So don't drag your feet for too long. But for me, it was a matter of being able to get to where I wanted to start.
Yeah.
I needed more than a 2-channel interface. I needed to be able to capture more than just iPhone video.
Yeah.
It needed to be a little better than that. There's plenty of podcasts out there that have great content. Sounds like shit. No video. We're talking about stuff. And this podcast has kind of evolved. Like, it was real gear heavy at first. And I had GoPros on pedal boards and whatever.
Yeah.
And, still sometimes that's cool. But really what I'm after is the perspective of, person to person, same industry, different hats, different walks. There's a lot to be learned from just those experiences, and maybe it'll help inform somebody, especially talking to somebody like you, who isn't doing it the traditional way of grinding it out in bars downtown in Nashville. I mean, I guess you were fortunate enough that you had already figured it out before you even moved here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And, what you said about if you have an idea and you have something that you do good, why not try it?
Yeah. Well, and you should. And I'll in that thought by saying this, one of my what I would consider to be when I watched the video, I'm like, oh my God, nothing about it was good. The lesson wasn't necessarily good. The backdrop was horrible. I had an okay camera, right? But I loved this particular song. It was a Brad Paisley Little Moment solo. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. I was just trying to figure it out. I was just like, Marty had told me stuff, and I just got my own kind of room where I had enough space to do it. And I was like, it was like my third video I had done at my house. And
so you're all yourself.
This is way back in the day, I haven't had people help me until recently, but way back in the day. And it looks horrible, right? But I was like, I freaking love this song, and who cares? What do I have to lose? If people hate it, they hate it. So
I probably didn't.
I taught the Little Moment solo, and 4 years later, I'm sitting at my house, and my phone dings, and I'm like, oh, whatever. And then I look at it, and I was like, I got a Twitter notification or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's whatever. And so I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll click on it. And it was like somebody that liked a video and that posted a video, and I was like, huh, that's cool. Who's that? And so I clicked on it, and I'm like, Brad Paisley, like what? That's weird. And so I clicked on the video, and I'm like, I wonder, because it was a picture of his kid, right? It was like Huckleberry or whatever the hell his kid's name is. And I was like, so I clicked on it, and I'm like, holy crap, this is Brad Paisley. This is the real Brad Paisley. And it was a video. And the only reason I'm saying this is just because I did it and I put it out there. And I was like, who cares? Like,
and you didn't like it.
And I didn't even like it. I was like, whatever. I did an okay job at teaching this solo. I'm just going to put it out there because I need to do something to start. If I'm going to do this, I got to freaking do it. And so I watched the video, and it's Brad Paisley, and he's in a giant arena. And he's on stage, and he's like, I had to relearn this solo for tonight. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. And he literally took my video and edited it. Like, he had his tech holding the video, and he's watching my video, relearning his solo. And then he put it out and posted it to the whole freaking world.
That's awesome.
Right? But the point being is like, that would have never have happened. And I just recently, he lives close to me, and I just recently ran into him at this place I always go to, and I was like, dude, that was so cool of you. And he's like, man, thank you for reteaching me that solo. You know, it was like one of those cool moments, right? But like, that would have never have happened at all if you just didn't do it. You know what I mean? Or one of my students, and I'm not trying to name drop or brag. I'm just trying to say, if you put yourself out there, you never know who's going to knock on your door. Like one of my students, he's the CFO of freaking HBO. You know, and he's one of my closest friends at this point, but like, I would have never have known him.
Sure.
Or, you know, one of my students owned an oil company, or it's just like these people that come and not only that, they've come to my like aid in my life when I needed somebody's like, dude, let me do this for you. But never would have known any of those people unless you just did it.
Unless Brett from 2010 didn't start making videos.
Right? And Marty's like, dude, do this. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it takes. Just do it. Like, and the confidence in yourself, after a while, you'll build that confidence to where your gut, you know
totally
what's going to work. You know what I mean? Because you've been there.
You feel for it.
It's like being on stage, right? You're a player. You go out and play. Like the first time you got out on stage was probably freaking terrifying. It's probably still terrifying, depending on the situation you're in.
Sure.
But you get out there and you do it.
Well, you find comfort where you can, which is, I know this thing.
Right.
I can do this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out there and I'm going to ignore 50,000 people or 6 people or anywhere in between or whatever. To me, it's never been a crowd thing. My anxiety comes from the level of players I'm playing with and the level of preparation. And sometimes I don't have control over either.
Yeah.
I've only played in one stadium, and I played in that stadium with no rehearsals, and I was playing bass, and I was singing backup. We had no rehearsals. One original member of the band, everyone else was a sub and the artist. And
where did it go?
I was like, okay, that's how we're gonna do this.
Yeah,
prepared.
Yeah,
and you know, if you prepare, that's half the battle.
Yeah,
at least from that's how I think about it. It's like, if I'm prepared, I don't have to be as worried. I can rest on my preparation and use my ears to make it work.
Well, and if you're there, somebody believed enough in you that you were good enough to be there.
That's true. And I was way fatter then, so I must have been pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, just do it. There's nothing keeping you from succeeding other than your own limitations. You know what I mean? Like, there's no excuse. At this age and time, no matter where you're at, you can succeed if you just have to want it. You know, every
it's easy to be lazy. Don't be lazy.
Well, no, and
boring.
And what I was gonna say is, you know, working at Divided by 13, I've met all different kinds of players, from the biggest gigs in the world to striving to make it. And everyone that's ever made it has paid their dues to get there. They know how to talk to people. They know how to play. And when they get the opportunity, it's 100% commitment. There's no messing around. That's what got them the gig. Whether it's, Rusty Anderson and Paul McCartney or any of these producers that I've met, they're spending the time rather than the instant gratification of going to the club or the party, which is important. Like networking, super important, but like
networking is important. Partying is not important, and,
right?
People lose sight on.
They lose sight.
The line gets blurred.
Keep the end goal always in mind.
Being out on the scene and networking doesn't help if you're shit faced.
Exactly.
I would say that's actually. Something that's always been stressed to young musicians is don't succumb to the temptations of partying. And
it's not worth it.
If you want party a couple of times, cool. If it starts creeping into what you really want, which is presumably being a musician or at whatever level, being involved in whatever it is that you're doing that also lends to partying, which is really only the art community. You don't typically go to a bank and at lunch, have a couple of pitchers of beer and then go back and refinance someone's home.
You are listening to the Gear and Beer Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Bobby Jam's Kitchen. Want to elevate your home cooking skills? Need new recipe ideas or meal inspiration? Want to see what guests are eating here before the podcast? Like, follow, and subscribe to Bobby Jam's Kitchen on Instagram and TikTok for tips, tricks, and recipes. At Bobby Jam's Kitchen. Cook your food and eat it.
Okay, so actually, this is a good opportunity for
sponsored by
nothing like splashing a little beer on your microphone.
That's right.
That's
Smell like a bar.
That's what we get the sock for. So we're at the questions segment. We've been doing this for I think since like episode 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And this is episode 36 now.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah, man.
You're doing it.
Out here, as you said, we're doing it. And
that's what it takes.
Hopefully, it's definitely better than the first one, at least from looks and audio, because I have learned so much.
It's work in progress.
All right, so the first question is and will always be, and I really don't. I'm not looking for deliberation. I'm looking for off the cuff, and I'm going to make you pick between a bunch of things that you would never otherwise have to pick between.
All right.
So the first one is Metallica or Megadeth.
Oh God, that's a good one. I go with Metallica.
Okay. Miles Davis or John Coltrane.
Davis.
Pat Metheny or John Scofield.
I'm going to really embarrass myself. I don't think I've ever listened to Pat Metheny, and I know that I should have because
you still can.
Everybody tells me he's amazing. I do love Scofield, though. Scofield's awesome.
Scofield rules. David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar.
I appreciate both.
I do too. Yeah. But the question is pick. It's not even a question. It's a choice.
I'm going to... Okay. Let me preface this. David Lee Roth albums, Sammy Hagar live, only because David Lee Roth didn't perform later as good, I think, as Sammy did live.
The vocal prowess of Sammy Hagar
he's so good live. Dave, like in the first two tours, unbeatable frontman. But after that, it's too much party.
Jump splits and things like that.
Exactly. And now it's just like, whatever, dude.
Okay, now we're going to get into some fun guitar-specific ones.
Okay.
Maybe they're fun, maybe they're not. I don't really know what's happening. There we go. Ingve. This is the stupidest one, but it's not the stupidest one. That one's coming up.
I already like Ingve.
Ingve or James Burton?
Ingve.
That's an interesting choice.
Yeah. I appreciate Burton, but like
sure.
Ingve's tone and vibrato, separate from his staggering technique, so good. So freaking good.
Man, we had a guy on here recently, Jimmy Green, guitar player for Anderson East, great player. He had this, I think it's a Greco is the brand, like a Japanese brand of guitars. He had a Greco F-line telly, thin line telly with the F-hole, and the frets were partially scalloped. And to all the way scalloped. The first 5 frets were not scalloped at all. It was the weirdest guitar I have ever seen.
It's strange. Scalloped fretboards are trippy. Yeah. Just get big frets. It's the same thing.
Well, yeah. Scallop them all or don't. But I've never seen a gradual scallop of a guitar.
Have you had Owen Barry over?
No.
Oh, my God. Get him over and then make him play Ingve.
Okay.
Terrifying.
I'm going to make that note right now. Okay. Where'd my questions go? There we go. Now we're getting to the good stuff.
Okay.
John Petrucci or Paul Gilbert?
Paul Gilbert, only because one of my first, like, wow, you can really do that on guitar was Intense Rock video from Paul Gilbert. Okay. And then my guitar teacher introduced me to Racer X, where I was just like, I can't even believe that's possible.
He's a freak.
At 18.
Have you heard the conspiracy about Paul Gilbert?
As far as
I've been hearing a theory for at least 20 years that some people think that he's Buckethead.
Interesting. I don't know. That's an interesting.
Have they ever been in the same room? I don't know.
That's an interesting.
They're both real tall.
Yeah. That's true.
But I have.
It's right up his corny humor alley. So I don't know.
If he's Buckethead, it's like full on method acting because there's I know people that work for like venues that have had like artist relation experiences with Buckethead where he's like. Sitting in the closet of his green room on a desk, holding his legs, and calls the person in there just to thank her for the hospitality, and he's still wearing a bucket on his head.
That's crazy.
Like being super meek and very weird.
So wait, let me tell you a story about method acting. So the guy I was talking about that did the James Bond video, he's the biggest like
Marty. Is that the?
No, his name is Nick.
Oh no. Okay. I can't keep all your friends straight.
His freaking hero, or his favorite movies like ever are Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
Those are pretty good ones.
So he's in Marina Del Rey, and he's painting a mural. And Viggo Mortensen's brother comes in, and it's like, oh, this is cool, whatever. My brother's an artist or whatever. And so he's talking to his brother. And so the next day, Viggo comes in. And this guy literally is the biggest Lord of the Rings fan I've ever met.
Your buddy is?
Yeah.
And Aragorn walks
ever met in my life. So Viggo comes up, and he's doing, I think that was like one of the Far East movies he's doing where he's like a Russian actor, but he's a method actor. So he's always in character, right? So he's like, Viggo walks up, and I'm pointing something, and he starts speaking to me in this Russian accent. Like, it's him, and we're painting together, but he's not
breaking character.
He's not breaking character. And so it's talking to this dude as we're painting together, like my hero of all heroes, and he doesn't break character for a second. It's all Russian actor, and we're painting together. And I was just like, that's freaking total commitment.
That is the kind of life experiences I'm here for.
That you'll never have ever again, right? Like, I was just like, how was that? And he's like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it was just one of those things where it's just like, did that just happen?
So you got an experience you wanted, but it didn't go anything like you thought it would.
It's like, it'd be like me, meeting Van Halen, but he's pretending he's Neil Young. You know what I mean? There's something, it's just like, wait a second, like, what's happening here?
I like to tell my Van Halen story because it's very short. It's also very weird and sounds very name-droppy. But I was at the funeral of Daryl Abbott.
Okay.
And I'm standing in a breezeway outside of the funeral home.
Yeah.
And it's just me and my buddy, and we're standing there, and we're standing still, and we're not even talking, and we're literally just being.
Yeah.
And Eddie Van Halen comes out these double doors. This is stringy hair, no facial hair. He's wearing mechanics coveralls. He is shit-faced.
Oh, always. He was always.
He walks out the door, and we're standing to his right, and he walks out, and he goes, "Oh, hey, what's..." And he looks at me, he points at me, and he goes, "Oh, hey, what's up, man?" And then he kept on walking, and that's my Eddie Van Halen story.
Do you need a better one than that?
I have a better one, actually. Later that night at the public memorial for Dime at the Arlington Convention Center, I watched Eddie Van Halen and Zakk Wylde literally almost go full-blown altercation on stage over the last bottle of wine.
Shut up. That sounds about right, though.
Well, I mean... It was like, it looked like it was about to get serious, and then Eddie realized that he was straight up, Zakk had like 100 pounds and about 8 inches on him.
Zakk would have taken him in a heartbeat.
Like with one hand while drinking the wine.
Never, ever.
Anyway, Eddie Van Halen rules. We don't have to talk about that anymore. So this question, I had a typo, and I've been leaving it because it's hilarious to me, and that question is Geddy Lee or Geddy Lee?
Yeah. There's no substitute, right?
I don't know who I was trying to put there, but it just says Geddy Lee or Geddy Lee.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think the only answer is Geddy Lee.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Jazz or metal?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And in a perfect world, or at least the real one, you don't have to pick, but I'm asking you to.
The me now, I would say jazz, and I'm a huge metal fan.
Same.
But at some point, like, I just need to hear something different.
It kind of gets like monotonous from a dynamics perspective, if not rigidity, like overly structured.
Yeah.
Whereas jazz just kind of like feels easier.
Yeah.
Even if you, and I often can't like understand conceptually what's happening between the changes and the soloist.
For sure.
Like I can always, you can just, I feel like you can tell when someone is murdering, even if it is conceptually above your head.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I many mornings of the week, I'm either Miles Davis or Bill Evans, like on Spotify, and like I don't know, man. There's just something about like their sense of harmony and it's awesome.
Those are two people specifically where there is no body. There is the spirit of them musically directly connected to the instrument, and there is nothing in the way of that bandwidth. If that makes sense. There's
a Rick Beato video, and I forget who the artist is, and this is horrible. I should know, but it's like the greatest.
You can only remember so many things.
Yeah, right. It's like the greatest solo ever recorded.
Oh, okay.
And it's a piano player. I forget what his name is.
Is it Oscar Peterson?
Maybe. Could be. But it is
I know which video you're talking about.
It is the most mind-melting thing I've ever seen in my life, because it's like and it makes
I'll link to that.
It makes me think of jazz, but it's blues, it's bebop, it's all these things in one. So, and it's just, he's surrounded by like jazz monster players. But it is the most terrifying musical thing I've ever seen in my life. And what made me think of it is you talking about just people. It's like downloading Genius in real time, and there's zero mistakes at a level that is so high that it's just like, how on earth did that even just happen?
Well, this is my assessment of situations like that. those people, more often than not, don't know how to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
They don't know how to file their taxes.
It's like savant level.
But they have a direct connection from their soul to their instrument, and the venue of their body is just the house.
They're just a vehicle.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Vehicle, that's the word, not venue. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Okay, so live or session?
As far as what are other C?
Let's say you're in a creative environment. No, let's not even say that. Let's say if you have to record guitar parts for the rest of your life or perform live. Yeah, this is you. There is no wrong answer.
I would say live because I could never be a session guitar player.
Well, I think that your videos prove exactly the opposite of that.
You know what's interesting is like I'm so comfortable with my level of playing, but I have friends that are so good.
Well, you're friends with like A level.
Okay, but that's
ridiculous people.
But that's my point. Is like I'm comfortable knowing I can have.
You're friends with unicorns.
Yeah, I can have fun at the level that I can play at and have a great time live. But like I understand in the hierarchy of what really could lend itself to greatness as far as a song is concerned, or if an artist comes in and to make their song world class, there's so many people that do that better. You know what I mean? And so,
but I don't think you shouldn't think about it that way.
No. I'm not disparaging myself. I have fun, but I'm not a session guys. I've been in sessions with Tim Pierce and all these people, or Kenny Greenberg and Rob in the same band. Like Kenny's like, come down to this session, check this out, and it was freaking monsters all in one room, and I was just like, this is magic, and like these guys, every one of these guys deserves to be here. Because they can create magic in an instant. I'm not that dude. I'll sit at home and I'll play something 50 times before I get it to the level I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like I'm cool with that. And I'm okay with that as a person. Now live, I can go and have fun and get into it and vibe off the musicians that I'm playing with and have an incredible time. But like a session thing, I think it's just because of who I've worked with. That's just like, to me, there's no greater musicians on earth than the high-level session musician players because they can create magic out of nothing in one take.
They're definitely valued for their ability to both create on the spot, but not only to create, but curate their creation based on whatever information they got. And listening down and writing their charts and talking to the artist and talking to the producer. And I would be willing to bet that you could do well in that situation because the way you just phrased it, you were thinking about it as recording as an artist, essentially. Or that's the way it seemed like you phrased it.
I mean, if somebody came in and said, like, we have a song and it's G, C, and D.
It's one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So you're not trying to perfect your vision. What you're trying to do is do something quickly to lend to somebody else's vision.
Right.
And their perfect is not the same as your perfect.
No, and just for instance, like Tom Bukovac and Rob McNally, like those two guys in a room together, and Tom, like you can watch some of his YouTube videos and I'll watch like some of the stuff where he's playing acoustic and he's like, he just records it or whatever. And it's like, in no world, and on my best day ever, could I come even close to what I just saw. And I'm not disparaging myself. I just know where I'm at.
You and everyone else that lives on this earth.
And so,
even Rob McNally.
No, well, Rob would say the same thing about Tom, right? But like, I get in a room with Rob and, you see Rob play and it's freaking amazing. But like, I remember,
his touch is unbelievable.
He's one of the best guitar players I've ever worked with. And I remember one day
he's just one of the best guitar players.
Yeah, no. And what I'm about to say would just lend itself to that even more. Like, we were at his house and he was just warming up, and he did like some 80s ripping metal guitar player, like flawless shredding so hard. I was just like, wait a second, like, what did I just hear? And he's like, oh man, I would never play that, but it's like good to warm up to. But I was like, I've seen you play 10 times with your band, and I've never ever seen you do anything that technically terrifying. You know what I mean? But it's like you just did it and it was flawless and it was amazing. But like, you just don't do it. You know what I mean? And I think in some world you realize, like, I love football, right? But I realize I'm never going to be an NFL player. You know what I mean? So like,
there's other value to be taken from that. And that's that just because you can play a certain way doesn't mean you should.
No.
Doesn't make it appropriate. But being able to do those things they all affect each other.
Yeah.
So the way you play that minor pentatonic lick or that blues lick, as influenced by that Frank Gambale thing that you just learned, or the Joe Satriani song that you just learned. All of that stuff affects, like, whether it's time feel, whether it's harmonic information.
Yeah.
It just all works together. So all that, I guess what I'm saying is, don't be afraid, you guys. Don't be afraid to learn something that you can't apply.
Yeah.
Because while there may be no direct application, the more you was that the NBC? The more you know.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will say is, like, playing wise, I may never be able to be at that level, but in what I do, I can go into a room and I can take one of those guys, and I think what I do really well that a lot of people may not be able to do, and maybe my thing is, I can synthesize what they're doing and bring it down to a real world person's level. Like, I can look at a player like Tim Pierce or Rob or something like that, and I can take the mechanics of what they're doing and, like, okay, how do I make this superhuman thing seem like it's a digestible,
accessible for the regular guitar player,
for us mortals, right?
Yeah.
And so, and what I do, that's, what I think I do good. You know what I mean? I can take those guys and, like,
I think you do that good too.
Well,
so do a lot of people.
and so that's something that, like, the playing level's not there, but, like, okay, I have things that I do think I can do well, only because I've had the experience and the opportunity to be able to do them a lot. But, like, what I'm super grateful for is I can take super inspirational people and learn how to take something that seems unachievable and inspire people that may not ever be at that level, but it just inspires them to pick up the guitar. And
do the shit out of that, sir.
Well, and at the end of the day, man, that's what it's all about, right? We're here as humans, like, we have this ability to create something out of nothing. And even if you suck, I guarantee if you suck and you create something of your own, you're going to value that more than playing somebody else's thing perfectly.
And what better way to come up with stuff of your own than learning a bunch of other people's stuff?
It's the best thing ever.
It's like learning. It's the word is vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's the more words you can say, the better you can articulate your ideas, and that's from context and sentences to musicality to all that stuff.
The whole bag.
Hell yeah. Freaking Brett Papa dropping bombs on y'all right now.
Beer bombs.
Let me ask you a few more questions and get you out of here.
No, it's all good.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, we can get this done.
Okay.
All right. Single coil or humbucker?
Oh, P90.
P90. I accept that answer.
Okay.
I love
P90s.
that. I love that. Nobody's gone outside the box.
Perfect tweener.
I accept. Volume pedal or knob?
Knob.
If you were to use a volume pedal, where in the chain would you put it?
after distortions.
You're one of those.
Because I like to have my gain.
I didn't even realize people used it like that
Yeah.
until like a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm volume knob, and if I have a volume pedal, I
Yeah.
set it up to work like my volume knob. So it's like, what am I doing here? This freaking Department of Redundancy department.
Exactly.
Do you? I don't. You don't have any compression on this board, do you?
You know what? What's the compressor? There's one compressor. Exact Tone Solutions. I've seen it. It's like a little gray one. It's not that big. It's got like 3 knobs on it. What's it called? Mirage compressor? I don't know. But whatever the compressor is, I played that one and I'm like, I could use that. That's amazing. I'm like simplicity. To me, in a perfect world, and I think Friedman does this best at the NAMM show. They have a stereo rig, a killer head, and an incredible delay, and they plug straight in. And to me, like when I go and I do that, I'm like, this is perfection. It's just plugging straight in. You got a good delay and a couple cabs, and I'm good. And then I just
Are they doing at NAMM? They have to be doing some sort of like. Oh, are they using an aux? Or are they doing? Oh,
no. It's all real deal there. You know, they have.
Is it like a super low watt?
No, man. They have 412 cabs in there. You know what I mean? So I think at any given time you're hearing 2 412 cabinets with an SDE 3000 delay going into the loop of all the different heads. And to me, I'm such a child of like, and I know Eddie didn't have just that, but like I'm such a child of that particular sound of like a modded Marshall or, you know, in a delay to me,
one of the most classic sounds.
That's all I ever use. I'll tell you what, the one thing I use more than anything is a boost pedal. And for me right now, that boost pedal is the Archer Jeff pedal. That's the only pedal I ever use. Like consistently, like 90% of the time, it's just whatever the head sounds like with just a little touch of something.
Yeah.
I don't play. I don't think what I do warrants a compressor, except in post. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Everybody uses compressor.
Yeah. But like, it's not something I don't use because I wouldn't. It's just because I haven't gotten into that. I would love to start to be able to like understand that whole world. I just don't. I'm very like minimalistic when it comes to stuff.
Same, man. I don't know if you, with the exception of the EQ pedal, you will notice pedals with very few knobs and switches.
Exactly.
Look at my amps. They have very few knobs and switches.
Exactly.
Like, I don't have a timeline. A timeline's a great pedal, and it's a huge asset to somebody who is a computer programmer.
Yeah.
But I am a kid from Garland, Texas, and I turn knobs until they do what I like.
El Capistan is one of the best delays.
That is one of that. If I have to pick one pedal, that's the one I pick.
I would too, man. It's such a good one. I love the Echoplex pedal too, the MXR one, but the El Cap, there's just something like about it that. It can be pristine or it can be nasty, and I don't know. That's a really great one.
I just like the thing. I like how much control you get with the Capistan. There's only 5 knobs, but you've got secondary functions for each knob, including but not limited to being able to cut low end and stuff out of the repeats or add spring verb and in a non-reverb unit sometimes just a touch of reverb on the delays. You can turn the delays way down, and it's basically like having a little bit of spring on, you know?
Yeah.
To me, that's extremely usable. But also being able to control all the different tape qualities and flutters and all that stuff. That's super cool. This is the only... to get back to compression for just a moment, I feel like there's really only 2 applications on a board. It's either a color or it's a function. Yeah. And I don't like the colors. I mean, unless I'm trying to like redo late 80s, early 90s country guitar,
Right.
I could just go get the Boss compressor.
Right.
Where that's what they were using.
Yeah.
And it's that color, and it is as in your face as a pedal
Yeah.
as you can find.
Yeah.
But this is the Lowell George kind of emulation, the slide rig.
Yeah.
So it's like two 1176s
Oh, it's
into
such
each
a
other
good
for like
compressor,
clean
dude.
sustain and headroom.
Yeah.
I'm running it at 18 volts. I'm not using it like it's meant to be used.
Yeah.
I'm just using it basically if I'm running into overdrive,
Yeah.
just to kind of even it out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
awesome.
It's a pretty big pedal for the minimal thing that I'm doing with it, but
That's a great company, though. They make
it is a great
stuff.
company. That company, Origin and
Yeah.
Petty John,
They make awesome.
it's
stuff.
like they're trying to make studio quality components
Yeah.
for your pedal board.
Yeah.
and
Well, and it
they
looks
do a good
cool,
job.
too, man.
And it does look fucking
Yeah,
cool.
Their stuff's awesome.
Shit. All right, we're jumping to the end because I'm going to get you out of here.
No. Dude, take your time, man. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay, well then I won't. Okay, so this is April, right?
Yeah.
And this is a dumb question for you because I know you know the answer, but do you know who John Paul Jones is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, April on this podcast is John Paul Jones Awareness Month.
Is it?
Because
When's
I've
his birthday?
encountered, I don't know when his birthday is, but in the beginning of this month,
Yeah.
I reviewed the questions
Yeah.
and whatever. And I was like, I had asked people, I think the question used to be Geddy Lee or John Paul Jones.
Ooh, see,
and
that'd be a
so
tough
many
one for
people
me.
didn't know who John Paul Jones
Holy
was.
crap.
So now the question is, do you know who John?
In that,
He's the Robert DeLeo of that era.
no, in that context, man, I love Geddy Lee, but John Paul Jones, Jesus, man.
Well, there is no Geddy Lee without John Paul Jones.
No, and he's just a monster musician.
Definitely in my underrated list.
And I think in Bonham, I think if I could have any drummer ever, that would be my guy.
Deer and beer.
Okay, so I was going to ask you what your favorite pedal is, but I'm going to just assume it's going to be the Archer because that's the one that's your pedal
The
label.
Jeff pedal, though.
The Jeff Archer.
That's the Jeff. Yeah, the Jeff Archer is the one for me. I'm not. It's interesting.
I don't understand. What is the Jeff one?
So the Jeff one
Is there a third version?
No, I think there's like 6 of them.
Oh,
but
of
like
course there are.
the Jeff one, Jeff Beck had an Archer, and he's like, "Could you do this?" And so they tweaked it. And that one, to me, and RJ, he came over to my house a while back, and I'm like, "RJ, dude, this is the best pedal I've ever had in my life. Like this pedal is insane." And I had an extra one, and I'm like, "Just take it with you and tell me this isn't one of the best pedals you ever played in your life." He's like, "Okay, all right." And so, a couple weeks went by, and I'm like, "So what's up with the pedal?" And he's like, "How much is it?" And I told him, and he's like, I'm just gonna give you the money now because it's already on my board. It's one of those pedals that is just like, it's just perfect. It's just that perfect, like, oh, that's exactly what it needed.
The tweaks that Jeff Beck made
Yeah,
were the ones.
because it's that cool, like, mid-range.
Of course they were.
That cool mid-range thing that you want, but I wasn't always a huge Klon fan. I appreciate when other people can do with a Klon, but I wasn't necessarily a Klon fan.
Same.
And the only other Klonish pedal that I really like is this Nordvang pedal, which is freaking so good.
Is it like a dual?
Yeah, it's called the 83 drive. So one's like a Klon style, and the other one's a Bluesbreaker style pedal, and it's just money.
Take a picture.
It's so good. I think if I could only have one pedal, that might be it. It's a really, really, really good one. And this thing too, this Nordland freaking Nobles pedal. So I have a bunch of different Nobles style pedals. I have like the Bell, the Shanks pedal. I've had some other real Nobles pedals, and I put them all in a line. And I took that thing. Justin Ostrander told me about this thing.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, just get one of these. And I was like, okay. So I took all the ones that I had that were ODR1, and an ODR1, and I put them all in a row, and I'm like
an OG vintage ODR one?
All the good ones, right? And all the good copies of one. And I put them all in a row. And I'm like, can this thing sound like these other pedals? And I could dead ringer every single one of the pedals. Like to where it's like, you can't tell, like nobody could tell the difference. Like if you A-beat it, it would be like, I don't know which one's which. This thing's amazing. So
that's all. Yeah.
Because there's more flexibility, like the low cut, like there's the ODR ones that are a little too bassy, so you can take that out. But there's also some like inherent frequencies.
I have one of those, by the way.
Yeah, some of the there's some of the good old green ones and some of the good gray ones that have a thing. But like with the spectrum, the mid, and the low cut knob, you can like find all those frequencies and like
and that's been my experience is like. That pedal works way better on a blackface Fender than it's going to work on. It doesn't work on the Matchless.
Yeah.
But mine doesn't.
Yeah. Because
of the low end. This thing has an inherently great low end.
Right.
Same thing with the Marshall. But what I have been doing with mine is my ODR1 is now on my bass pedal board. And it's
really
the bass. It's the bass best I've ever heard. It's the best bass overdrive that I've ever had.
Really,
I love it because of that extra low end.
Yeah, right.
Like you don't turn it on and it doesn't immediately sound like
right,
that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I love distorted.
First of all,
bass
any pedal that I turn on and it does this thing, like I'm just out on that.
Yeah.
But whatever. Nobody cares what I think about that.
Well, they must. You got a gear podcast. Come on.
I've been thinking about getting into that. Speaking of gear, this doesn't have anything to do with gear. What is your favorite thing about being a musician? That's kind of a weird question.
No, it's not. There's a lot of things I appreciate, and so I think picking the one sole thing would be it's a creative outlet. And second to that, because I think inspiration and creativity is like one of the most powerful forces that we can experience when we're alive, right?
Sure.
But the other aspect right below that is just meeting the people who are super inspiring.
Sure.
Like the Guthries and the Robs and Books and all these people that like Tim Pierce and you just watch them and you're like, man, that's like, it's magic to me. I always say it's like magic because like when you get in a room, like Tim Pierce took me to a session one time and it was him on guitar, it was Chris Chaney on bass, and it was oh god, what's the guy's name? Oh my god, I can't believe Vinny Colaiuta on drums.
Never heard of her.
Right. And so he's like, just come to the session, it'll be fun or whatever. And I was like, okay. And they were tracking a band from here. It was like, and they were doing like a Southern rock thing, but they were like the band, right? And, Chris and Tim were playing. I was like, my God, like these two guys are so freaking good. And then they stopped and they did their parts. And then the drummer was, and it was Rob Cavallo. He's a producer. He did like all the Green Day and Dave Matthews and all that stuff, right? And he's like, hey, can you redo that drum fill or whatever? And like, just do this part a little bit differently. And the drummer was just ripping. Like, and I was just like,
it was the greatest drummer that's ever lived.
I was like, who is that? Like, because it was just so incredible. And Tim laughed. He's like, dude, that's Vinny Kelly. And I was like, oh, well, there you go. But it was like that level of musicianship. And I keep telling players like Tim and all these other guys, I'm like, somebody needs to film you guys doing this because, and I would love to do it, but like, it's just until you see it with your own eyes, like you just can't.
I don't even think seeing it. I think being there.
Yeah,
and
like
experiencing.
Yeah,
how
it's
the
just
how.
Well, and hearing it in that moment, knowing that that's their first or second pass, it's something they've never played before.
Exactly. I think that's the whole thing.
It's just like
how effortless it is for some of those people. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, let's do 14 of these today,
Yeah.
and they'll
And
all
they
be
do it.
as notable.
It's
The parts
great.
will be as memorable.
Well, and I think of myself like when I record a video at home, and
Especially Vinny.
Yeah, and I press record, and it's like, oh, that sucked. I got to do that again. And it's like 50 takes later, and it's like, well, I would have been fired. It's just like, yeah. So that's not my session. My session career isn't one of my aspirations because of like.
Yeah, but you're not the producer that you will be working for in a session. Won't be you.
Right. Well, I know, but
Every session I've ever done, the solo take that they use is not one that I would choose.
you're like, please,
Every
no.
time, but that's what they want. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we're
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
We're done. Let's move on.
It's just, it's amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anytime I play like shit,
Yeah.
I'll get a bunch of compliments. Anytime I get done and I feel like I just ruled, no one says anything.
Well, it's the Chuck Berry licks that everybody likes at a bar. Win. Everyone's like, yeah.
I if I do one thing, it is play like me. Mm-hmm. I remain, authentic to the song and the style, but even playing the blues, I feel like I sound like me.
Yeah.
And
well, that's a good thing.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like me. I just hear what I hear.
Yeah.
And I used to worry about if that maybe that's gonna get me in trouble. But like, they either like the way I play or they don't.
Yeah.
That's
Why
the way it
not?
is.
Yeah.
Play what you hear. It is important to understand what and when things are appropriate. But play what you hear.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially on a session. That's why you're there. You're the tool in the box that they're pulling out to do this job.
Well, yeah, and I agree. Like if they've invited you, there's something about you that they want.
They want something.
Yeah.
So you come, you be yourself.
Yeah.
More than likely, they're going to get what they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
If they call me to come in and sound like Rob McNally, well, they're going to be pretty upset, and they're going to end up calling Rob McNally.
Right.
Like, I am a Rob,
Yeah.
but my last name also does start with an M.
Yeah.
But it's not McNally, and I'm not going to sound like that
If
guy.
he's got
'cause
time
he's
that
a
month,
freaking
right?
unicorn. So you've already kind of given. I have a question that's business and career tips. You already kind of did that. So actually, I skipped one. You told me your favorite thing. What's your least favorite thing about being a musician or being in the industry of musicians?
Ooh, God.
Other than all the obvious stuff.
Um,
like pay and hours.
I'll say this, and that's to that point. Go after what you want, because I think in my world, like, that's not a thing I think about anymore. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
And if I can be the example, just because of like again, like what we said, we're in a town of insurmountable talent.
We're swimming in a sea of unicorns, Brett.
Right. I mean, and that's not an understatement, but like, if I can be successful, you can. You know what I mean? So, when it comes to music, I don't know, man. I just love it so much that I don't think for me right now, there isn't a downside.
You're just generally a picture of positivity, and
Well,
it comes across. You really are. It comes across in the work that you do. It comes across in just hanging out with you and talking to you. And like that.
Yeah.
Like,
what
else would you want?
Yeah, no, and that's just it, man. I every day I wake up.
You're a positive role model.
Well, man, and every day I wake up and every day I go to bed, I'm just, man, whatever you want to call it, I'm thankful. I'm just like, thank you, because like, this is amazing.
Well, you're well deserving, and I'm serious. You're well deserving, and humble's not the right word. You know what you're doing. You know what you want. You've gotten it. You're getting it, you're doing it, and the important thing that we talked about, the hang is there. You're cool.
Yeah,
and not cool and like you're
no. I get what you're saying.
We talked about earlier. Don't you guys do that to me?
But that being said, any of you out there, there's nothing that I'm doing.
You might not be as cool as Brett, but you can be cool,
man.
You can be cool.
Everyone has an opportunity to do what they want to do. You just gotta. You know what I would say to everybody out there? Just know specifically what it is you're going after.
It is important.
Yeah.
To have a general.
Yeah. It's one thing to be
lane.
like, I want to play the biggest stages in the world. And it's like, I'm going to put that in my vision board.
Cool. What are you going to do there? A bunch of tapping?
What are you going to do to get there? Or whatever it is. Or, I want to do a YouTube channel and make a living. It's like, okay, we'll show up every day.
Whatever it is you're going to do.
Yeah.
Show up every day.
Yeah.
That's the hashtag show up every day. That's what we're getting out of this. All right. A few fun questions here.
All right.
And I want this to be off of the top of your head, no deliberation.
Okay.
If I ask you this question tomorrow, I want a different answer kind of quickly.
Okay.
3 desert island records.
Oh, God. Van Halen 1.
Okay.
God, that's a tough freaking question.
Exactly. No deliberation. You just come up with stuff.
Holy crap. I could just be okay with Van Halen.
Just one Van Halen record?
No, okay. So
Could be worse.
I would say Van Halen. I'm a huge David Gilmour fan. So some Alive, Delicate Sound of Thunder.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite albums ever.
There's 2. You got one more. You can do this.
Oh, God.
It's hard.
It is so freaking hard. I don't know. That's a great question.
Reach back.
I mean, I'm a huge Hendrix nut too, so like
pick one. There's a bunch of good ones. There's only one right choice though.
What's your right choice on Hendrix?
It's not mine. It's most people's choice is always Band of Gypsies.
Oh, that's so good. God, that's right.
And it's so non-indicative of classic Hendrix, which I think is why people like it.
Yeah.
Because it almost, I think that the argument is that it is his truest expression of himself.
It's his best playing ever.
It's extremely out there as in regards to what you're used to before.
But from start to finish, his playing on that, like I remember I was a huge Hendrix fan, and then I remember like I listened to a lot of the stuff, and I think Bold as Love is my favorite.
I like Poppy Hendrix, man.
Hendrix album.
Crosstown Traffic, give me that kind of shit.
It's good stuff.
What a great song. That's
so
not they're going to melt your face.
No.
But it's such a great song.
It's so good. There's so many. That's the problem.
Or Stone Free or stuff like that.
So
it's
good.
like just
so good.
The songs. That's,
but
not to take away from
again,
it,
so like listen to Hendrix, and then somebody's like, have you heard the blues album? And I was like, blues album? What's that? And then I listened, and I was like, my God, there's a whole other...
Is that posthumous release?
No, I don't know if it was or not, but it's him just playing a bunch of blues songs. And there's like a version of Red House and Voodoo Child and all that stuff on there. And Catfish Blues and all these other songs.
Is it live stuff?
No, it's just in a studio album.
Like B-sides?
Yeah, I mean, it's like covers.
Different version of Red House or...
Yeah, and it's him just ripping blues. So I was like, that's amazing. But then I remember I went on a vacation to Denver, and this one girl who was like my girlfriend's best friend at the time, she's like, have you ever heard of Band of Gypsies? And I was like, Band of Gypsies? What the hell is that? And we got all baked, and she's like, listen to this album. And I was like, okay. And I heard it, and I was just like, why did nobody ever tell me about this album?
Well, I didn't know what... You never hear about it.
You don't.
Like such a niche record, you know?
And his playing is... freaking insane. It's so good. And then looking back, I remember reading articles of like Joe Satriani be like, Band of Gypsies album is the best Hendrix album of all time. Like, You know, and it's like you go back and you're like, and they always would say like Machine Gun, like listen to the Machine Gun. And it's like, yeah. Like as far as like pure just raw expression on guitar, it's like that's pretty tough.
Man, what's the one that John Mayer quotes at the end of Who Did You Think I Was in the Where the Lights Are? Not Power Soul. Power Love, is that what it's called? Power Soul?
Power Soul, yeah.
Yeah, Power Soul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so good.
What a riff to end all riffs.
Well, and the other version of that album, like they released like the other performances of that album.
Oh, yeah.
And he does Stone Free and stuff like that on it. And it's just like that version. He kicks on that fuzz. He's like, turn me loose, and kicks on the fuzz. And it's just like the most massive guitar tone ever. It's so good. Hendrix, for sure.
Freaking Hendrix.
Yeah.
Do you have a guilty pleasure record or band?
Like something that people wouldn't think?
Something that, like, in middle school, somebody would, if you were like, yo, I really like this NSYNC No Strings Attached record. Or Time and Tide by
There's
Bosch.
a lot of those. You know what I would say is the most...
Johnny Hates Jazz, whatever it is.
The most out of character album for me in a while was the Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves.
Masterpiece.
One of my favorite albums of all time.
It's a masterpiece. It's
every
literally
song,
dripping with vibe.
Every freaking song is a 10. Yeah.
That's what happens when you
and she's always
set
been
a Texas girl free, man.
Yeah, she's always been great, but that album, I remember hearing it, I'm like, my God, this album is
she like
insane.
Climaxed as an artist, and like
you don't top that album.
Yeah, it almost kind of sucks to be her in that instance.
Good luck with that.
And now she's doing like Open Door America Architectural Digest videos of her house, which is awesome, by the way.
And Duran.
So I have two questions. One is, now I'm going to ask you to give me yet a fifth album for album of the week.
Fifth album for album. Like,
just
everyone needs to go check it out?
Yeah, that one of those.
Journey Departure. Some of the best blues rock guitar playing ever recorded.
I don't know that record by title.
Oh, God, it's so good. Seriously, like, if you want one of the best examples of somebody who plays some of the most wicked blues you've ever heard, but also some of the most melodic guitar solos you've ever heard, that album is tough to beat. Neil Schon is like
he's a
peak wicked. Plus, like, everything about him, his tone, his vibrato, his phrasing, his timing, like every single thing on that album.
That's one of Letaria's guys. That's one of his.
Mark's?
Yeah, it was one of his.
Dude, I got a course coming out with Mark Letary that is freaking terrifying.
I'm sure he's an absolute.
He came over
savant.
and I was just like, really, dude? Like, really? It's this easy for you? Like, it's just not even fair. And it's just like, what?
It's not fair.
Yeah. He's
fair.
A beast. Great dude, too.
Great dude.
Yeah.
Longtime friend of mine.
Yeah.
Love that dude. He's super great. All right, Brett, it's the last question.
Okay.
We're in the King's Court.
Okay.
You have to choose between the Kings: Albert, BB, Freddie, Earl, Carol,
Freddie,
and King's X.
Oh, that's good too. God dang it. I have just recently become a King's X fan, and
They're so good.
When I hear him play guitar, I'm like, yeah, I think you're one of my favorite guitar players I've ever heard
What's
in my
his
life.
name? Like Doug Fremont or something?
It's Ty Tabor.
Ty Tabor, yeah. Doug Pinnick, that's the bass player.
His freaking
singer.
tone, God, is just insane. Like,
I love his singing voice too.
Like they're amazing. Yeah, no, that yeah.
You were right when you said Freddie, though.
I would say Freddie X. Yeah.
Freddie X.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Freddie X. Find it in stores near you.
Woo! That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been Brett Papa,
Man, thanks
king
for
of the
having me.
internet. Man,
No,
thank you so
not
much
a king,
for coming.
but
wow.
appreciative guy on the internet.
Guy out there dropping knowledge. If you are a good guitar player or a bad guitar player, you can learn something from his channel. Go to his website, all of the links, all the usual stuff. If you're not following him on all the places, please do. If you're not following us, please do. Again, all links and show notes like usual. We'll be back with another episode next week. Again, Brett, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you
Oh man, this was
taking
awesome.
all this time. This is one of our longer, it's not the longest, but this is one of our longer podcasts.
That was fun, man.
And hopefully one where I won't get a bunch of hate about talking too much. So even if you hate me, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Until then, thanks for watching Gear and Beer. See y'all.
That's a good name.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Gear and Beer podcast. We would ask that you please be sure to tell your friends about the podcast. And if you haven't already, subscribe and follow our Instagram and YouTube channels, as well as liking and commenting on our posts. Are there guests you want to see on the podcast? Topics you want us to talk about, or pieces of gear? Let us know. All these kinds of things feed the algorithms in a positive way and help us gain more traction, whereby enabling us to continue to bring you ever-improving content and guests. Thanks again, Gearheads. We truly appreciate your support, and we'll see you back here soon for another episode of
Gear and Beer.